Okay, I think we are live right now. Uh, so Michelle, oh yeah, we've got folks coming in. So maybe I'll pass it over to you.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Ramsey. Really appreciate it. Welcome to all the folks who are coming in the door. So lovely to see you all here. Really excited to have some really great conversations with you, answer all of your questions. Make sure that you're leaving here with all the information that you need to answer the age-old question of to gap or not to gap. That is the question, but also what is possible? What is a gap year all about? Who's doing it? Why are they doing it? How does this impact your other post-secondary options? We're going to be talking about all of that today, here to answer all of your questions. So this really is your time. So don't be shy with the questions. So if you have questions right away, you can pop them into the questions. It will be a very dynamic presentation today where we're going to be going back and forth between your questions and my slides and all of the things that you might need. We are going to make sure you leave here with all of those questions answered. So like I said, don't be shy with the questions. The more interactive this is, the more fun it is for me, and you're going to get the information that you guys need as well. Guys and gals, and all of our non-binary friends, so glad to have you all here. My name is Michelle Dittmer, and I am tuning in today from Burlington, Ontario. Maybe there's some other Halton folks here this evening. Burlington is home, is a traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Métis, and many other Indigenous folks who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. And I am very grateful to be able to live, work, and play on these lands. My ancestry goes back to the Huron-Wendat, and I very much recognize the privilege that we have to exist here and the expense that has that the expense that it took to get to be able to be where we are today, and I'm committed to truth and reconciliation in all of the work that we do at CanGap and in my personal life as well. So welcome to folks who are here. Like I said, my name is Michelle Dittmer, and I am here to answer your questions. But why in the world should you listen to me? What is my point? Who am I? What's going on? There is so much to talk about today, but you are in very, very good hands. So let's jump into it. Let's chat about gap years. Like I said, if you have questions, pop them into the chat. I'm going to start with a pretty bold statement here that taking a gap year is the best way to prepare for the real world. And I really, truly stand behind it. I have been supporting young people through gap years for over 15 years, and I have seen everything under the sun transpire during this time. And it is really such an amazing opportunity for you to develop lots of skills and to develop foundational skills that will help you be successful in the rest of your life, whether that's immediately after your gap year going into the workforce or going into post-secondary education, or whether that's in the long run, having different stories to tell, being the most interesting person in the room, being able to share this experience with other people. But what's really interesting is that I have this little subtext over here. With proper planning, it will not be a wasted year. Now, this is something that is one of the biggest misconceptions of gap years as a whole. People are concerned that they are going to waste their time or that they're going to be behind their peers. But let me tell you, if you are able to put a plan in place, this could be one of the most pivotal years that you may have. And we're going to talk about why that's so and some of the statistics we have around it to back this up. So that's where we are starting, and let's see where we're going next. Let's actually get to the bottom of this. What is a gap year? So I've put the definition that we use over here, this lovely definition, and you'll notice a couple things. It says it's intentional and purposeful. So we don't just happen into a gap year. You don't end up there by accident. It is a choice to put some time away from your normal routine, away from being a full-time student, to grow in other ways. This could be taking other educational pursuits. It could be hobbies. It could be working, volunteering, traveling. There are so many things you can do that aren't kind of the status quo. So you're stepping away from that and doing something different to be able to move yourself forward. So the goal is at the end of your gap year to have grown in some way and to have experienced life outside of the classroom. So who am I? When I brush my hair, I look like that. So I am Michelle Dittmer, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Gap Year Association. We have been around for 8 years now. We are a national nonprofit organization. So whether you choose to take a gap year or not, I do not make any more or less money. My goal is to help you decide if a gap year is the right decision, and then if it is, how do you make that time purposeful? What are the activities that you're going to plug into that year? Because sitting on the couch for a year is not an option. So what does that look like for you? So the Canadian Gap Year Association is this national nonprofit. So we are serving Canadians coast to coast to coast. We help them decide if the gap year is for them or not. And if it is, what are you going to do during that time? And we do it in a ton of different ways. We have the Gap Year podcast. If you're into podcasts, you can listen to it on any of your streaming platforms. We have a great YouTube channel. If you're more into that, we have ambassadors that talk about their gap year experiences and some tips and tricks that they picked up along the way. Everything from how do you defer your university acceptance, which we'll come back to as well, and how to deal with your gap year as a neurodivergent young person. So there are so many different things available in the podcast and on our YouTube channel. We have tons of events that are happening. We actually have one coming up. We actually have two coming up. I'm going to pop it into the chat. So if you want more information or you want to connect with me again, I'm going to be hosting a virtual one on this Saturday, Saturday the 9th. That's in the chat. If you live in the GTA and you want to come out, we are hosting one at the Mississauga Central Library right next to Square One. And that is happening on November 17th. So that's a Sunday. So if you do want more, come out to some of those events. They are incredible resources that can really, really support you and help you on that journey. So we have events. Our website is packed with downloads. So how to talk to your parents about taking a gap year, how to defer your acceptance, how to vet whether some sort of program is a legit program or just somebody who made a website. We've got all sorts of resources. We are here with you every step along the way. So that's a little bit about who we are. My promise here is to answer all of your questions. And this is your space. So ask the questions that you want to ask. And I know we already have one in there, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But if anybody else has questions, don't be shy to ask. But what I need from you today is I need you to be here and present. I know it's the end of a really long day. You guys have been through umpteen presentations, explored all the virtual booths, but I really want you here and asking the questions because this is your opportunity. You've got Canada's Gap Year expert at your disposal right here. So make sure you're asking your questions. Also, make sure you have something to take notes with. I'm going to be sending out tons of little gold nuggets that you're going to want to document in some way. So make sure that you are here and fully present. I promise you, I will make it worth your while. We got lots of really great stuff going on. So I've got this lovely little GIF here, or GIF, depending on how you want to say it. We have this question of always like, Should I go to university or should I take a gap year? And I know that's a conversation that's top of mind for a lot of students. A lot of students are maybe feeling not ready for post-secondary, or they don't know what they want to study, or they maybe they need to earn some money in order to reduce student debt coming out the other end of it. Maybe they're struggling with mental health. Maybe they are neurodivergent and want to spend some more time working on those executive functioning skills. There are so many reasons for taking a gap year. But we also have this really strong social narrative that still kind of shuttles everybody through one linear path and rates things in a hierarchy. That kind of universities at the top of the list. That's where we're all aiming for, and anything else falls below that. But the reality is, we are all on very unique journeys, and there are so many things that you can do and still be successful. So sometimes the system is set up to give you all the information you need to move into formal post-secondary. And often a lot of young people just continue on that conveyor belt because it's the easy path. It's going forward. It's doing what everybody else is doing. We're like those lemmings that just follow the path, even though we don't know what we want to study, even though we have other things going on. But it's kind of like that grade 8 dance where it's awkward and you kind of don't want to do it, but everybody's doing it. So you pretend it's cool, even though you're not ready for it, even though it's weird. And sometimes just going directly into post-secondary can kind of feel like that. But on the flip side, when we're looking at a gap year, sometimes we feel like this little puppy here, where what am I going to do if I'm not going to school? If I'm not going to start in September like I have for the last 14 years, what am I going to do? And that can feel very exciting, but also very overwhelming because we don't know. Things aren't charted for us in a very specific way. We have to make a lot of decisions and discover what is out there. And that is really what I am here to do for you guys today, is take you through that process a little bit. I'm just going to flip the slide here, and because it's a little distracting while I get to some of your questions coming in. So one question is, if I want to become a paramedic, do I need to take a gap year? Or would it be better to go straight through the college university pathway? Now, this is a question specific about paramedic, but I'm going to say this is a blanket answer for any direction that you want to go. If you are ready, and I mean truly ready, you are financially ready, you are academically ready, you are socially ready, your mental health is in a good position, you know what you want to study, and you just are ready to go, by all means, move forward. Okay, there's no reason, if you do not feel a need or a want or have something necessitating it, to take a gap year. If you want to, or if you have a need, a gap year can be very beneficial because it will give you a year to mature, a year to gain life experience of some kind, and it will give you the opportunity to build a network and really understand what's out there. So when you step into post-secondary, you are a lot more sure of where you're going. In grade 12, there is the pressure to have a job to save money for school, to get the grades to get into school, to fill out the scholarship applications, to decide what school and what program you want to get to. It's very noisy. There's lots of things happening in your grade 12 year. Sometimes when you take a gap year and you push pause on that academic busyness, there's a lot more room and opportunity for thoughtful decisions to be made. So you can actually be quieter, listen to yourself rather than choosing to go to school because your friend is doing it or that's your highest grade. You get a little bit more time and space to breathe and make a more informed decision for yourself. So there is no blanket answer, yes, it's a good idea, or no, it's a good idea. If you're ready, you feel equipped, and you have all of those things in a line, by all means, go ahead. You could always take a gap year later if you want, or not. It's totally up to you. But that's a great question. Is there anyone specific we can talk to after this presentation if you want to discuss more? Yes, 100%. We actually have free 30-minute calls with anyone who's interested. So I will pop that link into the chat now. So you could book right directly with me and we could set up 30 minutes to chat about what your goals are, what opportunities are out there. I will give you some suggestions in a little bit, but if you do want that one-on-one device, one-on-one advice, we can set up that chat afterwards. So for sure. Okay, is it common for all disabled students to graduate and go to university after grade 12? There is no common path. And I think this is one of the biggest disservices we do to you as students is your entire life so far, you've moved ahead based on the year that you were born. And the funny thing about life is the second you graduate from high school, that disappears. There is no right timeline. You are going to maybe take a gap year. Maybe you're going to go right into school. But from now on, from grade 12 graduation on, you're going to be hanging out with people that are older than you, younger than you, of your parents' generation. Sometimes you'll sit down in a university class and the person beside you is 35 years old. That timeline is an artificial timeline, and you are going to be on the right timeline for yourself. You can feel a lot of pressure to continue to move forward, and check those boxes. But if you need more time for whatever reason it is, don't be shy to take it, because if you rush yourself and you step into something you're not ready for, then you may not be as successful as you wanted. And I can tell you about 20%, 25% of the people that come to us for support have started a program and have either failed out or found they made the wrong decision, and then they're taking this time retroactively to figure out what their next step is. So it's actually sometimes more beneficial to push, pause, and do it proactively, figure it out, and make a better decision for yourself. So I would say, no, not all disabled students will go directly. Some will take a break. And that goes for abled bodied or able folks as well. You can take a break and you cannot. It's up to you. You are on your own timeline. So great question. Okay, next question is about applying to university. We will get to that in 1 second. So hold on to that question. The last question that I'm going to answer right now is, can a gap year only be 1 year or can it be more? Definitely, it can be more if you are intentionally setting it to be more. What we don't want to happen is we don't want to have a gap decade because you can't get started in whatever that next choice is for you. So some people take a gap semester. Maybe they go back to high school for 1 semester and then they take from February to September off. Some people take a gap year. Some people take a gap 8 months. Some people take a gap 2 years. So there is no exact timeline on this. The one thing that will change if you go for a long time, if you are away from school for a long time, you will become a mature student when you apply to school rather than having your grade 12 grades count for the same thing, which we will talk about in a second. So I'm just going to delete some of these off of here. Give me 1 second here. Okay, answer live, done. Okay, thanks for your patience on this, a little bit of the technical stuff. All right, I'm going to jump back into my presentation, then we'll come back to those questions. So as they come up, keep popping them in there. Super helpful to get all of those questions hanging in there. All right, so we get lots of messages coming in from all over the place. And often society will say that everybody goes off to university, everybody goes off to post-secondary. And that's actually not statistically true. So the data ranges depending on what study you're looking at, but I've heard studies say that 24% of Canadians take time off. I've heard 33% of students take time off. I was at a conference today, actually, and there was a study done on people who declined their university studies. So that means they applied, they got accepted, and they said no. And 31% of those people were just taking a year off. So the numbers are much higher than we think they are. The other thing that's really interesting is if we look at some of the data, students who take a gap year actually have higher GPAs in university than those who don't. They also graduate in fewer years, and they're more likely to get a job after they graduate. And these may seem really confusing as statistics, but if we think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. Students who take that time and step off the conveyor belt of education are making an active choice to return back to post-secondary after. So you're coming in with a different attitude. So instead of higher education becoming grade 13, 14, 15, you are actually making an active choice to come back. So it's not passive like a lot of other opportunities could be. And so going in with different life experience, going in with your eyes wide open, making a better choice of school and program for you, you're going to be more invested in in a deeper way. And that can be really helpful. And that's why all of these things are true over here. So the data does support that gap years are a beneficial pathway to take. Now, sometimes from Instagram, we get this message that it has to be super sexy. You've got to travel the world. You got to spend lots of money. It's got to be this big, very exciting adventure. And while some people do travel on their gap year, it is only a small proportion that do. Or if they do, they travel for a very small time. The number one activity that folks do on a gap year is work, earn money, reduce student debt, get in a good financial position. It is a large portion of what people do. But there are thousands and thousands of things that you could possibly do on your gap year. Now, it wouldn't be a very good presentation if I didn't talk about them. So let me just check the questions before I jump in and talk about what those things are. Okay, so the question is, we're getting very close to university application deadlines, and I've got a lot of pressure from parents. Okay, I don't want to tell them I want to take a gap year in a rush, but how do I go about planning my year and then telling them about it? Okay, I'm sorry you're feeling that pressure. It is very difficult sometimes when we think our parents are not going to be supportive. And that can be really, really challenging. And one of those first really, really difficult conversations to have. And so I feel a lot of people are in this same position. So just know that you are not alone, and it is very difficult. So I'm going to grab a link. We actually have an entire guide on how to talk to your parents about your gap year. It's a guide about what to do before your gap year, before the conversation with your parents, during the conversation with your parents, and some tips and tricks on how to do that. So that resource will really walk you through that. And you know your family more than anybody. So you'll know the best way to approach it. But parents often don't like to be surprised by things. So if you can do the prep work in that download, you can approach the conversation in a really mature, positive way. And the reality is, that's what they want to see from you. They want to see that you are being thoughtful about these decisions and you are moving yourself forward in some way. Awesome. Next question. How long is it too long to take a gap year? Can you have a gap for 3 or 4 years? Yes, totally up to you. It is up to you what you want to do with that time. Some people find it a little bit challenging to take multiple years because they get out of the habit of being a student and they get into different lifestyles that make it harder to go back to school. So my recommendation is to stick to around the 1 year mark unless you have something very specific that you are working on. If you are launching a business that's going to take 2 years, if you're working on an art portfolio and it takes 2 years, if you want to go teach English abroad and the contract is 2 years. If you have something very specific, then by all means go for it. Okay, next question. Do you think the myth about doing a gap year makes you lose focus and interest in school once you come back? Is that true? No. The statistics, again, I'm going to go back to the statistics. They show between 81 and 90% of students who take time off do return back to school. Now, the trick to get up into those higher percentages is you need to be actively doing something on your gap year. You need to be engaged in some sort of programming or some sort of support or something formal like working. If you're just going to sit on the couch for a year, then that's when the numbers start to get a little bit lower. And so the myth about people being disengaged is not true. What actually happens for a lot of students is they realize why they need to return to school. Because when they're applying for jobs, all they can get are minimum wage jobs. And they recognize that by furthering their skills and their knowledge and getting those diplomas or degrees, they're able to achieve a lifestyle that they are more interested in. So it's definitely not true from the statistics, and it's not true anecdotally from what I've seen from the thousands of people I have seen going through a gap year. If I choose a 5-month gap, can I still attend university after that 5-month gap? Yes. It all depends on their cycle of when those start dates are for the different universities or colleges. So in the university realm, usually it's a September intake. That's when things happen. They don't often have a winter intake, whereas the college system, there are multiple entry points throughout the year. So definitely if you are taking that break from February to September, 100% you can definitely get into school after that. Okay, I'm going to jump back into the presentation because I've got some other stuff that I promised you I would talk about. So let's jump into that. So what are some things that you could possibly do on your gap year? Here's a little list. So think about these things. Most people, when they think about their gap year, they think about that first 3 things: work, travel, volunteer. 100% those are great opportunities, great things to do on your gap year. But my job is to blow that box that you put a gap year in, blow that lid off the box and give you other ideas of things that you could possibly do. We have lots of students on their gap year that start a business. So whether that is a lawn care company or a snow removal company or a babysitting company or selling artwork or becoming a product photographer or selling jewelry. I think I might have said that one already. Or maybe they're going to teach seniors how to use technology or set up seniors homes to be smart homes. We've had people, what are some of the other cool ones? We've had people that have done like AI startup, Silicon Valley stuff that I know nothing about, and have done great jobs there. We've seen people start drop shipping companies that can run in the background while they're at school. So lots of opportunities to start a business. You could work on a major project. This could be something that you've always wanted to do. It could be something that is related to social justice or environmental justice. It could be something that you've wanted to create for forever. Maybe you've got this car that you've been tinkering and you want to get it up and running and roadworthy and take it on a road trip across the country. Maybe it's an art portfolio that you want to get going. Sorry about that. There's so many things that you can do. Definitely getting political, having an opportunity to engage with your municipal, provincial, or federal government during this time. We know what's happening south of the border right now and the impact that you can have on the way that your country is governed. Pardon me. Getting involved in that, getting more familiar with that can be really, really helpful. Definitely building a network of people. This is something that is very, very cool that you can do on your gap year if you don't know what you want to do. Get out there and meet people. Go and job shadow somebody who's an engineer. And you might realize, like, hey, I don't want to be on AutoCAD 8 hours a day. You might realize you don't like it. Or maybe if you don't know what you want to do, try job shadowing 3 different people, or do informational interviews and find somebody with a career that interests you and ask them about how they got there. What was their educational journey? What was their career path that they took? I got a cough. Give me 1 second. My apologies. I just had pneumonia a couple weeks ago, so I got this lingering cough. So as I was saying, you can get to know so many different people. I had one gapper that came to me and she wanted to get into the beauty industry, but she didn't know where or how. So we set up a plan for her that every month had a different theme. So the month of September, it was all about nails. So she had to do 3 things. She had to talk to 3 different people who had jobs in the nail industry. So she talked to a nail tech, she talked to a sales rep that sells product, and she talked to a chemist that developed nail lacquer stuff. So she talked to 3 different people. She had to volunteer in a nail salon, and she had to take a free online course. So she got lots of connections, lots of knowledge about that industry. And then she did it all over in October, but this time working on hair care. And then she did it all over in November, but for skincare. So by the end of her year, she had seen so many different things and really found where her passions and interests lay. So very, very interesting way to use your gap time if you don't know what you want to do for your future. Now, I definitely don't want to undermine the power of learning a new skill. We've got people who learn new languages, who learn a musical instrument, who learn how to code. We get people who learn how to bake or do their own laundry or drive a car. All of these things are valuable that you can do during your gap time. And the last thing I want to touch on before I jump into some of the questions that are there is you can work abroad. So if you are interested in traveling, but also want to earn money, there is a way to do that through International Experience Canada. So you might have seen it. I believe they have a booth here. They usually do. I haven't checked this year. Canada.ca/IEC. Those are the folks that work with you to get a visa. So that you're able to work in one of their 35 partner countries. So they will help you figure out how you're able to do that so you can actually go to another country, work there, earn money. So you're paying off your travel experience and getting a real true cultural immersion. So it's a great opportunity. This is a little bit of an old map, but you can see there are countries all over the world that you could go and work in. So very, very helpful resource for you. I'm going to skip that one there. Okay, going to jump back into the questions. Why do most people who emigrated from different countries and are in grade 12 take gap years? Great question. So sometimes there are age requirements. Sometimes there are paperwork challenges. Sometimes if you look at the cost for being a domestic student versus being an international student, that difference is huge. So some people will take a gap year to get their permanent residency so that they're able to pay domestic tuition. That could be a big factor. Sometimes it has to do with the visas that their parents are on when they're coming here. So lots of different factors as to why folks who are coming from other countries might want to do it. And on the flip side of that, there are also lots of challenges, cultural challenges for folks taking gap years, because often it's not part of many cultures out there. So if you fall under that category where this is something that isn't commonplace in your culture and you want to learn how to navigate that and have those conversations, book those calls with us. We're happy to help you navigate that. So 100% let us know. So sometimes, like we heard from the question, we think that our parents might think that we'll get lazy, that we won't go back to school, that university will frown upon this. So much that's out there. And I wanted to share a couple of things with you, just to share some of the truth. Now, these are pulled from a little while ago. I just haven't updated my slides, but it's the same. So there's something you can do in your grade 12 year. So in your grade 12 year, you can apply to post-secondary. And once you get accepted and you say, yes, I'm going to go there, you can apply for something that's called a deferral, which means that the university will hold your spot in that program, but for the following September. So let's say you get in, you hear back in May, you've been accepted. Yeah, way to go. You're brilliant. You can reach out to the school and say, you know what? I'm not ready to come to your school in this program for September 2025. Can I start September 2026? And all over schools are all over the map. Some are like, yay, some are like, nay. And sometimes it's program by program. So you'll have to do the research. So all you have to do is Google the name of your program and then deferral policy. And it's usually one of the first links that comes up. So I pulled a couple here for you just so you can see. So the first one up here, this is UBC. UBC has the most liberal deferral policy. The very first bullet there, if you're planning to take a gap year, you can defer your acceptance. So they are kind of the most liberal, the most open to this idea. I've also pulled the University of Guelph here for two reasons. Number one, it says submit the deferral application by August 13th. Most schools have backed that up to kind of the end of July, but you can have time to think about this and you don't have to put your deferral application in until the summertime. So you can accept in May and then defer up until mid-September. The other thing that University of Guelph outlines very well right here is often you have to defer your residence and your scholarships that you've been given as well. So you want to make sure that you're not going to be losing any of those other things that you've worked so hard to get on your gap year. So that was kind of one of the questions that came in. Should you apply before your gap year or on your gap year? So you can apply in grade 12 and defer, or you can not apply and just apply in your grade 12 year. Now, not on your gap year, you apply on your gap year. When you apply on your gap year, your grade 12 grades will count towards your application in the same way. So if you are applying to an Ontario school and you're applying through OUAC, one of the questions that you are put in there, that you put in the OUAC application is, are you coming directly from high school? So you would just say, no, I'm not coming from high school. And then they will look at when did you graduate from, from school. And so that will actually let them know that you have taken some gap time. And that can be really, really helpful. Each school will have a different length of time where they will just take your grade 12 grades and apply it in the admissions process. So one of the questions here is, can you have a 6-year gap year? You can definitely have a 6-year gap year, but what you need to know is, how are you going to get into the school afterwards? Are you considered a mature student, or will they just take your grade 12 marks? And every school has a different cutoff for how long your grade 12 grades will be the admission criteria that they look for. So definitely take a look at that. Great questions coming in. Let me just get through a couple more slides and then I will jump back into those questions. I know we are running out of time here. So you may also have some preconceived ideas of what this is like. You might be this brown little dog. All of your friends are soaring off into school and you might feel like you're being left behind or you're falling behind. And I want to tell you that that is absolutely not true. Taking a gap year could often be a leapfrog move. So by taking that time and pushing pause now, sorting things out, getting clear on what you want from your future, you can actually be the white dog where you're going to go ahead of your friends because they might switch their degree or their diploma or their school multiple times, costing them additional years and additional tuition money. So a gap year can definitely be an opportunity to get ahead of the game for sure. Now, like I said, I've been doing this for over 15 years now. And these are the words that come out of everybody's mouth. It was the best decision ever. They come away with more confidence, more independence. They have memories and friendships that they never ever would have had before. And I will tell you, in all of my years, I've only had one person tell me that they regretted their gap year. So while it can look very scary looking forward, when you look backwards at it, people almost unanimously will tell you that it was a great decision for them. Okay, so I am just going to skip through a couple of these and answer the few remaining questions. Okay, so the first question is, how challenging is it to return to something like science studies after taking a gap year? Okay, big question around STEM and all of the things that have memorization components to them. Um, it's a lot like riding a bicycle. It is all about how fast can you relearn it. So if you have learned to ride a bicycle as a child and you are not riding a bicycle for a couple of years and then you get back on the bicycle, you might be a little bit wobbly at first, but then the muscle memory comes back and you get going again and those habits come back. And it's the same thing in being a student. You've done it for 14 years. You're not going to forget how to do it, and you'll be able to pick up where you left off. I did a podcast episode with a first-year math professor at York University. His name is Professor Andrew Skelton. And he said he can't tell the difference between somebody who's taken a gap year and somebody who hasn't, because the reality is, over the summer, everybody forgets how to differentiate equations. That's just what it is. It's about how fast can you relearn it. For those of you that are concerned about academics, you can definitely take courses throughout your gap time. You can join science clubs. You can run practice tests. If you want to stay sharp with those academic skills or those academic disciplines, there are ways to keep those skills sharp as well, but it's not too difficult to navigate that. Okay, last question that I have here. Got a couple more minutes, so if you do have questions and you want to pop them into the chat, now is your last chance to do that, because you will have closing remarks coming up in about 4 minutes. So let's get those questions in there so I can answer them for you for sure. Okay, so do some universities have a bias against students who have taken gap years? You'll have to check with each school. So it's school by school, program by program. As a general sweeping statement, the answer is no. You're just coded as an out-of-phase student, so some things might be different. You might have a different timeline, so your application deadlines might be different. When you hear back from the universities and colleges might be different. In some cases, there is a quota of people that they will accept that are out of phase, but I would say if you could get in your grade 12 year, you are going to pretty much almost guaranteed be able to get in after your gap year as well. So you can always ask those questions of individual schools and individual programs, but for the most part, it is pretty neutral for them. Next question, can you take a gap year if you are 24? 100%. You can take a gap year at any time. Sometimes they have a different name. Sometimes they're called a career break or a sabbatical. It's the same. It's taking a pause on what your normal routine is and shifting it into something else. The question's even if you're 50, 100%. If you need to take that break and you recognize that there is something you need to do to recharge your battery, to find excitement in your life again, by all means, these are things that are 100% okay to do. You just have to figure out how you're going to navigate it. Okay, question. Would taking a gap year be beneficial for exploring very different career paths, especially if you're uncertain about which direction to pursue? Yes, this is a brilliant reason to take a gap year. Because the reality is, coming out of high school, you don't really know what an engineer does. You don't know what an architect does. You don't know what a mechanic does on a day-to-day basis. So they're asking you to make decisions that you don't have a full picture. You don't have all of the answers that you may need to make an informed decision. So definitely spend the time, job shadow, talk to people who have done it. Take a free course online to see if you even enjoy it. Okay, other questions coming in. This is great. Are there financial supports for students in traveling? Yes. There are a couple. I will pop them in here. cangap.ca/scholar. Oopsies, that's supposed to be scholarship. You guys can figure that out. We have a $750 scholarship that we give out. The other one that has been really successful, RBC Future Launch Scholarship. They offer $1,500, and a lot of people on gap years have been very successful at getting funding and putting that towards travel because it's all about skill development. So definitely those would be what I would be looking at. If you're graduating high school 2 years late, would taking a gap year be a bad idea? Absolutely not. If you are taking those extra years to finish up your high school diploma, maybe that's because you are burnt out. Maybe that's because a slower pace works better for you. You are not in a race. There is nothing better at the end of this if you go faster. So if it is something that you think would be beneficial to you to push pause, to get ready, to prep for moving forward, then by all means, do what you need to do and prepare for whatever it's going to look like after the end of your gap time. Would it be possible to take a shorter gap and start midway through the university year? Most of the time, no. Most of the time, universities have a September start. They don't like to have January or May starts, even though they run courses. So on the odd chance, or on the odd case, they will, but I would say as a general rule, it's a September start, but you can check with all of the different institutions that you could possibly need. So that is kind of where we have to wrap up due to timing. I want to say thank you for being here today. Cangap.ca, we have a booth here with some downloads. You are always welcome to reach out to us. We want to support you in your gap year journey. It's been my pleasure to chat with you. Don't be shy. Book those calls if you have further questions. This is just such a wonderful opportunity to figure yourself out, figure out who you are, figure out how the world works and how you want to contribute to that world. There is no timeline. There is no rush. You are on your very own journey, and it is up to you to figure out what that looks like. And if we can be of any support, please, please, please let me know. That's what we are here for. Wonderful. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the closing remarks, and hopefully I will see you in one of those calls. Take care.